thing. They want to help people in their community, and but at the same time, you hear a lot of folks whose knee-jerk reaction to always trust the cops. This thin blue line. They might say stuff like they put their lives on the line, they have such a tough job, and the police themselves might think, we're all that stands between chaos and civilization or something. But you got to think, like, why might their job be tough? And is it because a lot of the time is spent going around harassing people and issuing people ransom notes or putting people in cages for acting in ways for that person doing things that don't harm anybody? I mean, I know if I was going about my life and I wasn't hurting anybody and someone came along and demanded money from me or said they had the right to put me in a cage, I wouldn't be down with that. So a lot of the people that have this sort of anti-police, mentality, it could be, I would say, not justified, but I can see where they're coming from. But it's not going to help. It's not going to help lessen that situation or shrink it by perpetuating this us versus them. Instead, I think we have to try to share ideas, because at the end of the day, ideas have consequences. And as we see from the Free State Project and sort of the larger liberty everything that's going on, I think we live in a very pivotal time, and ideas are like viruses. And if we can successfully share ideas with people, we can really bring about a more favorable reality. And again, the main drive for police right now is to protect the institution. That's the thin blue line. It's not to bring about justice or accountability. It's to protect the institution. So they investigate themselves, and they're backed up by the court process. So a lot of times, the way I look at it, and one thing I think is important is for us individually and also try to communicate to others that the importance of language, and to not conflate legislation that somebody in Concord or in DC writes to be law. That's legislation. That's man-made and it's arbitrary. And I would say law is things that we know in our conscience, or if you point to natural law, or God's law, or customary law, to be emergent from the bottom up. Whereas so if you find yourself in a situation where the legislation and the law conflicts, I would hope you would side with the law. I would hope you would side with what you know is right. If someone today comes in and says, hey, anybody who's advocating freedom is going to be shot in this pit, I hope that, that's a fear-based tactic. I hope that we would all then be even more encouraged to stand up and speak out against and act according to what we know is right. And so a lot of times police employees, they go after folks who threaten their claim legitimacy, who don't obey the legislation, more than they go after people who violate law. They don't, sure, I mean, it looks bad if there's a lot of violence in their town or whatever, but they're just going to say, we need more resources, give us more money, we need more, tools to combat this. But, if you disobey, I mean, that's where they really take an issue. We see a lot of our friends who've been threatened with years in cages, or who are in cages today, for questioning this, what I call a status quo. If you don't obey, then they want to make an example out of you, because they only have the ability to do what they do because people are, I wouldn't say complacent, but they're unthinkingly, tacitly giving them authority. And a lot of this isn't to knock, non-police employees. It's to recognize the fact that these ideas that a lot of us might talk about haven't been introduced to more folks. And most of the ideas that a lot of people operate by are learned from government schools, which I call gun run schools, because again, it's an institution based on force. So they're learned all these ideas, and the whole paradigm is taught through government schools or through the mainstream media. So the idea of even self-ownership and the right to defend one's property, which includes yourself, might be kind of foreign to some people. So there obviously is a lot of incentive for the police employee, for the status quo, to perpetuate and peddle these ideas that allow them to subsist and to try to take more right, to grow and expand, essentially. If there's Austrian economists in here, it's kind of one of the takeaways from a public choice school of when there's a lack of competition in police, in any good or service, but we're talking about policing, then the incentive for the police department isn't to actually be accountable to people or to provide justice. Instead, it's to grow their size and scope of influence, so to hire more police employees, to say more actions that are legal today are illegal tomorrow, and things like that. So today, you know, there's that saying, when freedom is outlawed, only outlaws will be free. Like, it shouldn't matter what these strangers put on a piece of paper, as long as you're acting in line with your conscience, you know, then that's a much better reality. So I guess what I'm advocating is, instead of like a law coming from a centralized monopoly from the top down, I definitely think it is emergent, and it comes from the bottom up. And instead of having, you know, I would, like, for example, would those of us in this room, would we agree that like Abel has a sole monopoly on the right to use a legitimate right to use force? Because if we let Abel do that, like, he's going to be able to, you know, just do it more and more and more, and until, you know, we have no ability to
definitely become a maniac.
Right.
Homicidal. Yeah.
Right, but instead, if we said, hey, we all have the same rights, it's 100% freedom coupled with 100% responsibility. You know, so if you do something wrong, you make right, or else, you know, there's consequences. Then that's, I think, a much better scenario. So if we can agree to do that in this sort of setting, in our own spheres and our own lives, then it should definitely be able to scale up, and across our communities. It shouldn't be allowing for some people to have a legitimate right to use force leads to the gravest genocides that we see in the world throughout history. And so I just encourage us to look for that kind of stuff. I was going to show you all a couple of short videos that kind of underscore these points, but I have them on this Mac, and I didn't have an adapter. So there's a quote here by Bob LaFarge, who was the founder of the Freedom School out in Colorado back in the day, and you know, he says, "Government is a disease masquerading as its own cure," and that's what we see, you know, with policing. So there's